The first strike. The Galactic Council had ruled over the stars for centuries, a group of the most powerful alien races in the universe. They looked down on Earth, a small, primitive planet that had never been a threat. To them, Earth was nothing more than a dot on the map, a place filled with weak creatures who could never stand against their advanced technology. But Earth had been watching. For years, humans had studied the stars. They had learned about the alien empires, their fleets, their weapons, and their strategies. They knew that the day would come when they would have to stand up for themselves. And that day was finally here. It started with a message, a simple one. A small, unassuming transmission sent to the Galactic Council. The message was clear: Earth demands recognition. Prepare yourselves. At first, the Council laughed. They ignored the message, thinking it was a joke or a fluke. But then something strange happened. A sudden burst of energy shot through the galaxy. It was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. No one could explain where it came from. It was as if the very fabric of space was shaken, and then, just as quickly, it stopped. The Council's leaders gathered in their war room, a vast, cold space with a panoramic view of the galaxy. They stared at the data streams coming in, trying to make sense of the unknown phenomenon. The sudden burst of energy had knocked out several of their star systems' power grids, and the fleet's communication systems had been temporarily disabled. "This is no accident," said Commander Xylox, a tall, imposing alien with piercing red eyes. "Someone has found a way to disrupt our systems. This is no small feat." The room fell silent. The aliens had never been challenged like this. But who could have done it? The humans? They were still a young species, far from mastering space travel. How could they have reached out so far, so quickly? Commander Xylox's fingers trembled as he tapped into the intelligence reports. He scrolled through Earth's technological progress, seeing the primitive nature of their weapons and ships. Yet, something in the data didn't add up. There was no way the humans could have created such a burst of energy. Or was there? "I don't care who did it," said Zrather, the ruthless leader of the Council. "We will make an example of them. Whoever thinks they can challenge the Galactic Council will learn the consequences." The Council ordered an immediate counterstrike, sending their most powerful fleet to Earth's solar system. It was a show of strength, a reminder of who controlled the galaxy. The aliens had powerful weapons, faster ships, and technology far beyond anything Earth had ever dreamed of. But as the fleet approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The humans were ready. Without warning, Earth's defenses activated. A series of unknown satellites, hidden deep in the solar system, powered up. They released a shockwave of energy so powerful it lit up the skies like 1,000 suns. The alien fleet was caught off guard, and their ships were disabled in seconds. The Council's ships began to drift aimlessly in space, their energy drained, their weapons useless. Panic spread across the fleet. "How is this possible?" Commander Xylox shouted, his voice shaking. "We've been blind to them this whole time. The humans had done it. They had struck back with a power no one could have predicted." The Galactic Council, the mightiest force in the universe, was stunned into silence. For the first time, they were powerless. Back on Earth, Commander Alex Knight stood in front of a group of engineers and military leaders. He watched as the energy readings from the satellites continued to surge. Their plan had worked. Earth's first strike had been a success. The alien fleet was in disarray, and the humans were no longer the weak, forgotten species they once were. The world watched in awe as Earth's defense systems continued to disrupt the enemy fleet. News spread across the planet in a matter of hours: the Galactic Council had been forced to retreat. But Commander Knight knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not give up easily. They would retaliate. And Earth would need to be ready. As the first strike ended, the silence was deafening. The universe had just witnessed the rise of a new power, one that would never again be ignored. Earth had made its first move. The Galactic Council had been warned, but they had not been prepared. And now, the game was on. The unseen weapon. After Earth's surprising victory, the Galactic Council was in turmoil. They had underestimated the humans, thinking them weak and easy to control. But Earth had struck first, and now the Council was scrambling to understand how it had all happened. Back on Earth, Commander Alex Knight stood in a dimly lit war room, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. The alien fleets had retreated for now, but Knight knew that the Council wouldn't stay silent for long. They would come back, angrier and more prepared than ever before. Earth needed something more to protect itself, something far beyond the technology they had shown. "Gather the team," Knight said to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Cruz. "It's time to show them what we've been hiding." Sarah nodded, her face a mixture of determination and fear. She had known this moment would come. For years, Earth had been secretly developing a weapon that could change the course of the galaxy. It was a weapon so powerful, so advanced, that even the Galactic Council wouldn't be able to stop it. But until now, it had remained hidden, its existence a closely guarded secret. The weapon wasn't just a machine, it was a reflection of humanity's strength, their will to survive. It was powered by something far more valuable than technology, human ingenuity and spirit. The Council had thought they were the masters of the universe, but they hadn't accounted for the power of humanity's determination. As the engineers worked to prepare the weapon for its next test, Commander Knight couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He knew that this was the only chance Earth had at survival. If the weapon failed, they would be vulnerable. And if the weapon succeeded, there would be no going back. Back in the Galactic Council's war room, the leaders were still reeling from the humiliation they had suffered. They had ordered the fleet to retreat, but they were far from giving up. If anything, they were more determined than ever to crush Earth. "This is an insult," Zrather, the leader of the Council, growled. "A planet with no technology, no military power, has dared to strike at us. We will make them regret it." Zrather's eyes burned with fury as he turned to the Council's greatest minds. "I want a countermeasure, now. We will not let these humans continue to challenge us." The Council's best engineers and tacticians got to work immediately. They had underestimated Earth's ability to defend itself, but now they would show the humans just how powerless they truly were. The Council would retaliate, and this time, they would bring everything they had. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the weapon was ready. The final tests were complete, and the engineers had given their approval. It was time. Commander Knight stood in front of the weapon's control panel, a massive machine that hummed with energy. It wasn't much to look at, just a series of sleek metal panels and glowing lights, but Knight knew its true power. The weapon was designed to manipulate the very fabric of space and energy. It could absorb the power from entire star systems, rendering the alien fleets helpless in an instant. "Are we ready?" Knight asked Sarah, his voice steady but filled with a sense of finality. "We're ready," she replied, her eyes scanning the control panel one last time. "Once we activate this, there's no turning back." Knight took a deep breath. This was it. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on the success of this weapon. He glanced at Sarah, then at the map of the galaxy, now covered with alien fleets. The Council wouldn't expect this. "Activate the weapon," Knight ordered. In the heart of Earth's secret base, the weapon roared to life. Energy surged through its systems, building to a powerful crescendo. The hum of the machine filled the room, and a wave of energy began to pulse outward, rippling through space. It wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's answer to the universe, a declaration that Earth would no longer be a silent observer. They would fight. They would survive. As the weapon activated, a ripple of energy spread across the galaxy, reaching the Council's fleet before they could even respond. The ships, so powerful just moments ago, were suddenly powerless. Their weapons went dead. Their engines sputtered and failed. The Galactic Council's war room was filled with screams of panic. The countermeasure they had developed was useless. The weapon was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and now it was too late. What have they done? Commander Xylox shouted, his voice tinged with fear. How could they have created something so powerful? The Council's greatest minds had no answers. They had no idea how the humans had done it, but the weapon was already working. The fleet was disabled. And in that moment, the Galactic Council realized that they had made a terrible mistake. Back on Earth, Commander Knight watched as the weapon's energy pulse spread across the galaxy, cutting through the alien fleet like a blade. Earth had struck back, and now the Galactic Council was the one left speechless. The game had changed. Earth was no longer a small, insignificant planet. It had become a force to be reckoned with. The silent siege. The pulse of Earth's weapon sent shockwaves through the galaxy, leaving the Galactic Council's fleets disabled and drifting in space. For the first time, the Council was silent. They had never faced anything like this, a force they could neither understand nor control. Back on Earth, Commander Alex Knight paced the war room. The weapon had worked, but he knew that the Council wouldn't remain down for long. The pulse may have crippled their fleet, but they would retaliate. They always did. We've proven our strength, Sarah Cruz said, her eyes glued to the flickering holographic map of the galaxy. But now, we wait. Wait? Knight asked, raising an eyebrow. Are you suggesting we sit back and hope they just give up? Not at all, Sarah replied. I'm suggesting we use our greatest strength, patience. She pointed to a series of blinking lights on the map. The Council's fleets are in disarray, but they're regrouping. They'll send reinforcements, more powerful than before. And they'll be expecting Earth to come at them with everything we've got. They'll be ready for another direct attack. Commander Knight nodded slowly. So we don't give them what they expect. No, Sarah said with a quiet smile. We don't. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council was in crisis mode. The attack on their fleets had been unexpected, but the silence that followed was even more unsettling. The leaders of the Council gathered once again, more determined than ever to regain control. This is unacceptable, Srather spat. We've been humiliated by a primitive species. It's time we show them the cost of defying us. Commander Xylox stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. We will strike back, but we must be clever. Earth has shown us that they are not to be underestimated. A direct attack will not work. They've already prepared for that. What are you suggesting? Srather growled. Xylox turned to the star map, pointing to a distant planet on the far edge of the galaxy. I suggest we don't strike at Earth directly. We go for their weakest point, a place they will never expect. We infiltrate. The Galactic Council fell silent, considering the idea. It was dangerous, but it just might work. Back on Earth, Knight was already putting his own plan into motion. The pulse from the weapon had disabled the alien fleets, but it hadn't won the war. The Council would come again, and this time, Earth needed to be prepared. We've crippled them, but we can't assume they won't recover, Knight said, speaking to his team. We need to be ready for anything. And I mean anything. Sarah Cruz nodded. We're building a fleet, but we're also learning from their mistakes. We're going to stay one step ahead. We're going to make them fight on our terms. The plan was simple: remain hidden and launch surprise attacks, hitting strategic targets across the galaxy. Instead of engaging in open warfare, Earth would launch a series of silent sieges, disrupting the Council's operations without ever being detected. We have one advantage, Sarah said. The weapon. They won't see it coming again. But we'll need more than that, Knight replied, his mind already calculating the risks. We need stealth. If we hit them in the right places, at the right time, we can keep them off balance. Earth's forces began to deploy covert units, small, stealthy ships designed to infiltrate enemy territories without detection. The ships would strike at key locations, military outposts, supply chains, and communication hubs. The idea was to keep the Council guessing, never letting them get a foothold long enough to strike back. As the silent siege began, Earth's ships slipped through the darkness of space, avoiding detection with precision and skill. They moved like shadows, striking quickly and disappearing before the Council's forces could respond. One such mission took place on the edge of a distant system, where a Galactic Council supply depot was located. The mission was simple: destroy the depot's power supply and steal valuable resources. If successful, the depot's destruction would cripple a significant portion of the Council's fleet in that sector. The mission was carried out flawlessly. Commander Knight watched as the team's stealth ships returned, their hulls glowing softly in the vast darkness of space. The depot had been destroyed, its power grid obliterated. The Council supply lines were severed, and Earth's forces slipped away without leaving a trace. But Knight wasn't satisfied. The Council would rebuild. They always did. The key to Earth's survival wasn't in overpowering the Galactic Council, but in keeping them on the defensive, forcing them to react to humanity's every move. Back at the Council, the mood was darker than ever. The fleet had been regrouping, but the silent attacks were taking a toll. The Council's intelligence had been compromised, their supply lines disrupted. Their communication systems were starting to fail, and they couldn't find the source of the attacks. "This is a problem," Zylock said, his voice tense. "We can't afford to keep losing resources like this." Zrather slammed his fist on the table. "We've underestimated them. Earth is not just a threat, they are a force. We need to strike back, and we need to do it now." But even as he spoke, the Council leaders knew it wasn't that simple. Earth had become a shadow, a constant threat that struck without warning and vanished without a trace. The Galactic Council had to act quickly before they lost control of the galaxy entirely. Earth's silent siege continued, and with each passing day, humanity's grip on the stars tightened. The Council, once confident in their power, was now a reactive force, struggling to keep up with the unpredictable strikes of the humans. Commander Knight stood at the helm of his ship, staring into the endless void of space. The war wasn't over, but Earth had proven something important: they were no longer a weak, insignificant planet. They had become a silent force, a shadow in the stars, and no one, especially the Galactic Council, could ignore them any longer. The Council's desperation. The Galactic Council's once unshakable confidence had crumbled in the face of Earth's unrelenting strikes. The silent sieges were wreaking havoc, and the Council was no closer to understanding how the humans had managed to outwit them. The constant attacks on their military outposts, communications, and supply chains were becoming a serious problem. In the war room of the Council's command center, the air was thick with frustration. Zrather, the leader of the Council, paced back and forth, his eyes glowing with rage. "They keep hitting us where it hurts," he growled. "And we still have no idea how they're doing it. They're ghosts, shadows. Every time we think we have them cornered, they vanish into the void." Commander Zylock stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back. "We can't keep fighting a war we don't understand. Earth has become a master of deception. We can't outsmart them unless we change our tactics." Zrather's fiery eyes turned toward him. "And what do you suggest, Zylox? Do you believe they've somehow become more intelligent than us? That they've gained the upper hand in a matter of weeks?" Zylox's expression was calm, but his voice betrayed the desperation that had begun to creep into his thoughts. "No, I don't think they've become more intelligent. But I do think they've learned how to use their environment against us. Earth's greatest strength isn't their technology, it's their ability to adapt. If we continue to underestimate them, we'll lose." Zrather slammed his fist down onto the console in frustration. "Enough with this nonsense. I don't care about adaptation or trickery. We are the rulers of the galaxy. We do not retreat." But even as he spoke, the room was filled with a growing sense of unease. The Council's might had been chipped away, and they were no closer to solving the mystery of how the humans were able to strike with such precision. Zylock stepped forward. "We need a new approach." I suggest we strike directly at their home planet. Take the fight to Earth. We hit them where it all began. Zrather hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. You want to destroy Earth? He asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Xylox's eyes locked with Zrather's. Not destroy, but cripple. We don't need to wipe them out, just send a message, a reminder of who we are. If we strike their planet with everything we have, we'll take their confidence and their hope. They'll have no choice but to submit. Zrather considered it. Earth's defenses had proven formidable, but if they took out the planet's heart, the place where the weapon had been developed, perhaps they could finally bring this war to an end. I'll have my fleet prepared, Zrather finally said. We leave for Earth immediately. On Earth, Commander Alex Knight stood before a holographic projection of the galaxy. His fingers hovered over the display, zooming in on the Galactic Council's known fleet positions. He knew they were coming. The silence of space was about to shatter once more. Sarah, Knight said, his voice calm but with a hard edge. Prepare for the worst. The Council's fleet is coming straight for us. They're not going to stop until they've wiped us off the map. Sarah Cruz stepped up beside him, her face unreadable. We've prepared for this. We know what they're capable of. But we also know what they're not capable of. She paused, glancing at the tactical readout on the holographic display. We have one last move. The weapon. We need to deploy it at full power. But we have to be careful. This isn't just about Earth's survival anymore. If we use it recklessly, we risk losing everything. Knight nodded grimly. This is the final stand. We don't have the luxury of caution. The two shared a moment of silent understanding. They both knew what was at stake, and neither was ready to back down. The Galactic Council's fleet approached Earth with terrifying speed. Their ships, massive and imposing, cut through space like knives through butter. Zrather stood at the helm of his flagship, his hands clasped behind his back as he observed the data feed. This is it, he muttered to himself. The end of humanity's foolish rebellion. But as they drew closer, something unexpected happened. Earth's defense systems came online, but they were different than before. The ships that had once been hidden in the dark depths of the solar system now emerged, faster and more agile than ever. We've underestimated them, Xylox muttered as his fingers flew across the control panels. They're not just hiding, they've been preparing. And they've been hiding more than just their weapons. Shut up and fire. Zrather bellowed, slamming his fist onto the command console. Energy beams lashed out from the Council's fleet, but Earth's ships responded in kind. The battle was fierce, but it wasn't the overwhelming force the Council had expected. Earth's forces were small, but they were quick, strategic, and deadly. Each strike was calculated, and every move had a purpose. The battle raged on, but Earth was not backing down. Knight's plan was working. The Council's greatest strength, their overwhelming firepower, had become their weakness. They were too slow, too predictable. And Earth was fighting with an intelligence and adaptability the Council had never encountered before. As the battle unfolded, a new wave of attacks began to rain down from Earth's satellites. This time, it wasn't just energy pulses. Earth was deploying its final secret weapon, a series of nanotechnology-based weapons designed to dismantle enemy ships from the inside out. The first Council ship that was struck by the nanobots fell silent as its systems were completely disabled. Impossible! Xylox shouted, watching in horror as the first of the fleet began to fall. Knight's voice came through the comms, calm and confident. The Council thought they could crush us. But we're not just a planet. We're the last one standing. We will fight until the very end. The battle was far from over, but the tide was turning. Earth had shown the Galactic Council the true power of human ingenuity, adaptability, and the will to survive. The Council's desperation was growing. They could no longer predict their enemies' moves. Earth had become something more than just a small, insignificant planet. And as the Galactic Council watched their fleets falter, one thought filled their minds: Earth had proven they were no longer to be underestimated. The Galactic Council's silence. The battle raged in the vacuum of space, a dazzling display of light and power that echoed across the stars. But as the Galactic Council's fleet began to falter, the very essence of their dominance, once unchallenged, started to unravel. Ships that had once been indestructible lay shattered, drifting helplessly in space, and those that remained were falling prey to Earth's unexpected weaponry. The silence that followed was unlike any Zrather had ever experienced. As his flagship suffered another devastating hit, he stood at the helm, his face pale with disbelief. His eyes flicked from the tactical readouts to the chaos unfolding outside his window. His mighty fleet was crumbling before him, and his once unshakable confidence was gone. How could this happen? Zrather muttered under his breath, though his voice barely carried over the din of alarms. We are the rulers of the galaxy. How could these humans do this? Xylox, standing beside him, looked out at the battle with a growing sense of dread. The Council's fleet, the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen, was being dismantled piece by a planet they had dismissed as insignificant. This isn't over yet, Xylox said quietly. We still have forces we can call upon. We may be wounded, but we are not dead. Zrather glared at him. No. We've already thrown everything we have at them. There's nothing left. This is beyond anything we could have predicted. Xylox shook his head slowly. We've underestimated them. Their ingenuity, their sheer willpower. Earth has become something we never anticipated. Zrather clenched his fists. You were the one who wanted to strike at Earth. You were the one who insisted on a direct assault. What now? I never imagined this, Xylox replied, his voice steady but filled with regret. I thought we could crush them with sheer power. But they've outmaneuvered us at every turn. They're not just fighting with their weapons, they're fighting with their hearts. With their minds. Zrather's jaw tightened, but for the first time, he didn't respond. His mind was elsewhere, torn between rage and disbelief. His thoughts were interrupted as another section of his flagship went dark, the ship's power grid faltering. Commander, an officer called out, there are strange readings coming from Earth's side. Their weapon, it's becoming more powerful. It's disrupting our fleet's core systems, and we're losing control. Zrather turned to face the officer, his eyes narrowed. What do you mean, more powerful? He demanded. The officer's voice trembled. I don't know. But it's like their weapon is evolving. The more we fight, the stronger it becomes. Back on Earth, Commander Alex Knight watched the battle unfold on his screens. The Council's flagship, the largest ship in the fleet, was still active, but it was clear it wouldn't last much longer. Earth's forces were relentless, using their stealth tactics and superior adaptability to keep the Council on the defensive. Every move the Council made only seemed to expose their vulnerabilities. Knight turned to Sarah Cruz, who was observing the data with equal intensity. We can't afford to be overconfident, he said. The Council might be struggling, but they won't stop. We need to strike now, while they're still disoriented. Sarah nodded. I agree. We've shown them what we're capable of. Now it's time to finish it. They both knew that Earth's victory wasn't guaranteed. The Council still had resources left, and they weren't done yet. But Earth had something the Council didn't, a deep-rooted desire to survive, and a willingness to fight with everything they had. We're ready, Sarah said, tapping commands into her console. We've got the final push lined up. The weapon is fully charged. Back in the Galactic Council's flagship, Zrather's grip tightened around the railing as he watched his fleet disintegrate before his eyes. The once feared forces of the Galactic Council were now nothing more than a scattered, retreating mess. Commander, Xylox said softly, there's nothing left. The humans, they've won. Zrather's heart pounded in his chest, and for the first time, he truly felt the weight of the situation. Earth had defeated them, not through brute force, but through strategy, intellect, and sheer will. The very qualities that the Galactic Council had overlooked and underestimated. The council leader's voice cracked as he turned to face the rest of his shattered crew. "We are finished." The final blow came not from Earth's military, but from something far more insidious, the weapon Earth had kept hidden for so long. It wasn't just a pulse anymore, it was a concentrated surge of energy that sent shockwaves throughout the Council's entire fleet. The moment the energy wave hit, the flagship and its remaining vessels were consumed by a brilliant flash of light. The Council's once imposing ships crumbled into the void, disabled or destroyed entirely, their systems overwhelmed by the sheer power of Earth's final weapon. Earth's victory had been sealed. Back on Earth, the war room was quiet. The sound of the alarms had ceased. The screens no longer flickered with warnings or data streams. The battle was over. Knight stood at the center, surrounded by his team. The silence that followed felt almost too heavy to bear. "We did it," Sarah said softly, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. Knight nodded, though his face remained stoic. "We've done what they thought was impossible. We've shown the galaxy that Earth is not to be ignored." As the reality of their victory sank in, the room was filled with a sense of awe. The Galactic Council had fallen, not because of raw power, but because humanity had fought not just for survival, but for a future of their own making. The battle had been won. But the war for Earth's place in the galaxy had just begun.